Welcome to Living in the Matrix. I'm Jonathan, and I'm left of center.
And I'm Rich, and I tend to lean a little bit more to the right. But the bottom line is together we try to look for the balance of what it means to be human in today's world.
That's awesome. But you're going to have an amazing year. Like you really are going to have one of the best years of your career. I mean, here's the thing: we still have 6 months or 5 months, and you got a lot of runway still to even capture more.
I do what I really need to do is Jonathan, I'm just gonna be completely honest with you. As I've gotten older, I don't have the energy I used to have when I was younger. And I remember how you talk about, you've got this energy that
Yep.
you have. And what I need to start doing is just not listening to any of these feeds, like tap into energy as much as I can. I'm definitely going to go to after we're done with our call, I'm going to head down to the water, get in the sand, freaking feel the sand, get grounded, soak up the sun. I've been getting up every morning. And what I have been noticing is I don't need as much coffee anymore. When you do an ice bath and then you use the sun to wake you up and you look at it and then you
Oh God,
do
yeah.
your meditation, I mean, I've been averaging a cup of coffee every fucking day, and that's it. And yesterday I didn't even have coffee. I had
What
a
did you normally
smoothie.
have? What did you normally do?
Well, normally I'd have a cup and a half or 2 cups, right? So
Okay.
most
Yeah.
people have roughly 2 cups of coffee, maybe 3 cups of coffee, right? In the mid morning. And then
Hmm.
my friend Peter, he'll have coffee all throughout the day, and then he'll have an afternoon one. And a lot of people like that 3:30, right? Freaking pick me up. Classic.
Right.
You go to the watering hole at your workplace, and then you're digging in,
Grab
and
a
then you
I
have an
I just
espresso.
went to Phil's, man. I had a fetish for Phil's. Phil's coffee, if you don't know, is just this. I don't even know if they're national, but Phil's is this ultra highbrow, and they have what's called a filtered soul, sweet and creamy. And oh my God, it's so freaking good. I
Yeah.
can't pass one up or buy one. But here's the thing. So actually, let's get started because this is, I know we're already talking about it because we kind of prepped for this. Life hacks. So, this episode, we want to talk about life hacks and what Rich and I have gone through. And if you can comment, let us know your life hacks. Think about what
Yeah.
yours is. We would love to hear because what we are realizing is you can hack yourself and you can learn Kung Fu. This hacking process works because your brain is malleable. And that's the beauty of it is uh, let's start with diet, Rich. What have you done this year for diet?
Yeah, let's talk about that. So the first thing that I want to talk about in diet is not necessarily what goes into my body, but what doesn't go into my body, right? So that means
Ooh, that's a
intermittent
good way to
fasting,
look at it.
right? Yeah, so
Yeah.
diet involves time frames and what you take into your body and what you don't, right? So you and I both discovered, and I've known about intermittent fasting for some time, but I really got more serious on it this year, maybe even after I heard how much success you had again. And
Hmm.
again, the idea of intermittent fasting is this concept where you deny yourself any kind of caloric intake. And that means any kind of caloric intake. That means you cannot have, let's say a glass of juice. So some people think of fasting in terms of liquids. But when you're doing intermittent fasting, for all those who aren't familiar, you're actually taking a 12, 14, 16-hour window of your day, of your 24-hour period where you're not having any kind of caloric intake. So a perfect example for me, I would start my day at noon. I could have my meal, and then I would go till 8 o'clock and I would stop. And you're supposed to
Hmm.
stop cold turkey. That means not a shot of whiskey at 8:30, nothing. And so
Anything but water. You
anything but
stop
water,
everything but water. Yeah.
anything but water. Or
Or even
you could have
tea.
tea or coffee
Yeah,
as
green
long as
tea.
it
No, you
has like
can't have
maybe
coffee black. Yes. Sorry, you
coffee
can.
black.
Right.
Yeah. The purist would say you can't even have coffee because it does something to your metabolism. But most people that I know feel totally fine with doing that. And then if you
Yeah.
want to go one step further, I've talked to a lot of people who say if you have less than 40 calories, so meaning like if you got a dollop of half and half in your coffee because it's painful to drink your coffee without it, don't let that kick your ass. And again, boys and girls, let's not be legalistic about things. If you can find what works for you, then absolutely go ahead and do that. Now, of course, what's important to realize is when you do your intermittent fasting, and let's say you're going from not 12 to 8, but let's say you're going from 2 to 8. You've only got 6 hours, and that's what you were doing for yours. If you
Mhm.
decide your first meal is going to be in and out double double with fries, and then you have a mid afternoon, peanut butter smoothie with 900 calories, and then you finish off with a piece of pizza and like some
Right.
ice cream. That's not the plan, boys and girls. The plan is keep your caloric intake low. Jonathan, you had a really, really good methodology, I think, by starting off with a smoothie. And I think that's really good for a stomach that's kind of shrunk up to introduce kind of a.
Well, what are you doing? I'll tell my stuff. What are you doing?
Yeah, for me, what I'm doing is I'm doing a combination. So I like a protein shake that's actually not a protein shake, but literally either coconut or almond milk with something called Carnivore Complete. And this is basically beef tallow. It's grass fed beef, right? It's protein derived from grass fed beef. It's got organ meat in it. So it's got spleen and it's got
Oh, you're
heart
going for complex. Wow.
and liver. No, it's not complex. It's
So is it
just
protein based? Is it
yeah,
protein or is it more?
grass fed stuff, fallow, tallow, and so you get healthy fats, and it tastes delicious. So that's one thing I'll do.
Okay.
Other than that, I'll do sushi or I'll do a pollo bowl. I don't have the same kind of rigid methodology that you do, but and then I'll have
I
nothing else.
actually don't have a rigid
Oh,
methodology anymore. I'm really lax right now. I
okay,
am. And
good.
what the way so I basically do 10:30 over the last 4 months. I've done 10:30. I start with a glass of water, just replenish because most people wake up dehydrated. So
Of
I've
course,
learned drink a glass of water to start. Give your body that energy, and that's really been nourishing. I actually start to crave it. When I wake up, I'm craving that glass of water. And then I hit
I'm going to take a
a
quick pause
protein
there.
shake. Yeah.
Have you considered ever adding lemon to your water and or a pinch of salt and maybe even a little apple cider vinegar? So,
I've done the apple cider vinegar for a short term fast, but I've never done it
okay.
long term. That's actually a really good idea.
So the lemon concept comes from a detox. So there's something about lemon in the water, especially when it's a little bit of warm, and then something about adding a little pinch of salt helps with the electrolytes, right? Because you're getting your sodium.
Yeah.
And I've been told that's great. Most people just do salt and lemon, but a little apple cider vinegar, there's something about what it does to the pH of your body and helps kind of balance things out in the morning. But a lot of people don't like that taste. So a little lemon, a little bit of salt, and maybe just a touch of honey if that makes you feel better. And that's
Yeah.
typically you're introducing a few more kinds of small micronutrients into your body that helps give you better against the toxins.
You know what? I think I've just kind of done a pretty dumb man versions. I've just kind of winged it.
Yeah.
And I watched a guy on Instagram who talked about just he did 12 to 6
Uh huh.
and he did a protein shake for lunch. And I thought, well, that's an interesting idea. So I could load up on my proteins. I have never done that in my life. I've never done a protein shake ever. And my body responded to it really, really well. And I have completely dialed into my perfect shake that I can have every single day. And I absolutely love it. It's a, uh, it's a
No smoke.
banana
Mm-hmm.
with it's a Fairlife chocolate. I get them at Costco and I put that in. And then I do a PB chocolate version protein powder. And I probably would do what would be considered 3 large tablespoons. I do a lot of protein. And then I do a squirt of sugar free chocolate and then ice. I pack it with ice. So it comes out as a thick smoothie. Oh my god, it's so good. I love it. And it's like my perfect combination. And I realize you said something in the beginning is that everybody has their own thing. I think that's the interesting thing that we're learning as a species. Everybody has their own way and you have to find that way that works for you because Sean, who we interviewed, he does not do vegetables. And he is an advocate against vegetables, but
Right.
I love vegetables and they nourish me. So it's interesting. Keto worked for me. It worked good for my wife. It worked great for me. And intermittent fasting really works for me. But I have friends who it doesn't work for. So I think that's the key that I'm learning is that I'm tailoring it completely to me and I'm practicing what is working and what's not. I
Yeah.
listen to my body. That's all I do.
Yeah.
And the only thing that I'm still working up towards is a sense of exercise. Uh, I wake surf on the weekends with my friends, but I don't do it. I walk for 45 minutes with my dog every night. That's my only exercise. It's
Yeah.
not enough, and I can tell.
No, that's going to keep you away from getting a heart attack.
Uh-huh.
But it's not going to break you through that next level, I think, where you want to be. But it's
Yeah.
okay. I mean, you're not going to die of a heart attack. That's the most important thing is, are your joints, in good shape? You're not hurting yourself. But why would you feel like you kind of feel like you might want to up it a little notch, maybe with some high
You know
intensity or
what?
some other kinds
Yes.
of push-ups and stuff?
And it's not because I have to, it's because I realize if I do, I will have a greater sense of, um, I don't know, the simplest way would be, say, human experience. Losing 35 pounds, I realized was a shitload of my trauma that I carried around
Yeah.
for 20 years. And I let it go this last year. And it's weird living without that 35 years of trauma or however long it was that I let go of. It's like, oh, I've got all this renewed energy to be super creative, to excel at my job. Like I'm leading one of the most important projects in our company software right now. It's super
That's
fun.
amazing. Yeah.
And it's so I think the more that I realize I invest in myself, the more returns it gets because the truth is I've never worked out in my life. I'm
Mm.
not a workout. I used to play soccer all growing up, but once I got through college, I stopped playing. So I haven't exercised in like 30 years.
Wow.
And you
Well,
exercise, like that's one of you've always exercised, right?
I kind of have. Yeah. I was never really good in high school sports. I did cross country and I broke my arm and
So you were a runner.
yeah. My dad and I think I did my first 10K when I was maybe 13, 12 or 13. My sister did it when she was 9, so that's impressive. So my dad got me a real pair of Nikes, which we didn't have brand name shoes. I was kind of poor when I was growing up. So he got me a pair of Nikes, which is really amazing. And yeah, I ran that. And then I did a lot of hiking when I was in Boy Scouts, right? And so I've always loved getting out in the trails and doing calisthenics and stuff like that. So and then a little weight training while I was while I was in high school, right, as you know, on the football team, and then I did a little bit more in college, and so I've kept some of that muscle memory.
Have
But
you
I'm more
kept a
concerned.
steady exercise routine over the last 30 years?
I wouldn't say steady over 30 years. I'd say I was very intense in about 2000 and actually 1996, 97. Um, doing a lot of creatine and working out with a local buddy of mine when I worked for my early days at ADP. I always had a gym membership.
What were you
But
going for? Were you going for bulk or were you going for lean with a
yeah, I
cut?
was going for bulk back then. I was going to get strong. I noticed and look at some of my pictures back then, like my wrists and neck and other parts were bigger, right? And now
Wow.
I look back and I go, I rather just be very limber and have good stretching and just be
Yeah.
strong and not be a meathead, right?
Yeah. So one of the life hacks that I learned on Instagram that I haven't tried yet, but I actually really want to try. So there's two actually that I am looking at. As one is the Wim Hof breathing
Uh huh.
wake up method. So it's basically super strong inhales or deep inhales for 30 repetitions. And then your 30th repetition, you hold it as long as you can. And then you
Yeah.
do that 5 times. I'm like, that one's attractive to me. Like it's
Have
a
you tried
sense
it?
of,
Have you
no, I
tried it?
haven't tried it yet. No, I have not.
It'll make you feel like you're gonna pass out. It makes you almost a little dizzy, a little high. Believe it
Really?
or not. Yeah.
Oh, I could totally believe that. Almost
Oh
like
yeah.
a sense of loss of oxygen. It can
Oh
get you
yeah.
kind of
No,
high.
it's good. Give it a go.
And the other one was hopping. So this guy I saw, and it just seemed really simple. I thought it seems like a good sense of somatic exercise. He just hops and
Shopping.
he shakes his body. Yeah. So he hops on his toes and shakes his body and he lifts his shoulders up and down, and it's almost a stretching
Sure.
exercise, but it gets your body moving, it gets your energies, and he says it moves your chakras from base to upper mid. So because
Yeah.
by exercising your body, it moves. And that's another thing that I'm learning about is the sense of energy centers, or what they would call chakras. That
Hmm.
to me is interesting. I don't know enough to even be smart or healthy. I've got to really learn that, but it seems intriguing because you can connect it to where parts of your body that move. There's almost like sections, and
Yeah.
that's an energy center. So
We should
I
have
don't know.
Sean Clayton back on because he's got a deep understanding of the chakras. And then I had a healer. Remember, we had a guy named Byron Yates on, and his friend, and I knew him well. I mean, for at least few months. His name was Scott. He's the one who took
Who
his own
killed
life.
himself?
His wife Becky is an actual. She's a kind of a magnetic healer, right? So you lie down and she sees the
Really?
colors, and then she sees if you're grounded, and then there's kind of like resonance where you're actually doing exercises afterwards to kind of stimulate the skeleton, and they
Wow.
focus on that stuff, so she can actually see those kinds of things. So maybe we'll have her on in terms of because it's about healing, right? Aren't we talking about stuff that can heal people, and she can help get rid of stuff? So, but
Yeah,
totally
because
different. Yeah.
I realize that, again, going back, everybody has their own thing that works. And I really wonder if some medicines and practices work locally, like, because they worked for a local narrative that was happening. It's interesting because everywhere you go, I met a guy, talk about healing. I met a guy when I worked at City Team who had brought a man back from the dead. I mean, that's
Yeah,
kind of a
I think I heard
freaky
that.
thought.
I'm totally skeptical on that stuff.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And all the people had validated it. Like there was a whole thing that they documented. But I was like, yeah, that's
We're not talking like 2 days, 3 days in the grave. We're talking
no.
about
He came back to life and he was
no, but
dead
how
for
long
eight
was he
hours.
out? How long was he dead for?
8 hours.
Yeah, it's solid. I mean, it's not like he was out for like a half an hour or like there was something
Yeah.
going on, then he came back. He was gone. He was pronounced dead for 8 hours.
And he's probably, I will say this, he's probably the most probably the most anointed people, one of the most anointed people I've ever met personally. Like I met Sri Sri Ravi Shankar. I had dinner with him for a business dinner. And he was probably one of the other ones. He was like, you just knew something vibrated out. Now I understand it as a vibration. He was another one. But yeah, it was an interesting experience. So
Yeah. I want to go back to something that you'd mentioned, and I think we were talking about what works for you, right?
yeah.
Keto might work for some people, paleo
Did you
for
try
others,
keto?
meat only. I've tried keto, and it's a pain. It seems
It's hard
easy
work.
at first. Well, let's just talk about keto just for 35 seconds. You could get up in the morning and you have bacon, eggs with
Right.
grass fed butter, and you could have avocado and maybe a dollop of salsa, and it's like, okay, that's cool. There's breakfast. Then you move to lunch. Okay, I'm having a chicken salad tossed in olive oil, a little mustard, and some other kinds of sides. Maybe a little bit of cucumber, whatever.
Mhm.
Awesome, right? Dinner, salmon poached
Right.
with broccoli, yada yada yada, and you're like, hey, that feels freaking great. And how many carbs is that? Actually, that's not even 25 carbs if you think about it. If you add it all up, it's probably
Right.
18. And then what you realize is you do need some carbs, but then what you start to find out is it just doesn't feel as good. You eat
Yes.
that much and it just doesn't
Yes.
sit the same way, and you're missing something in the back of your mind. So that's the problem with keto. But going back, I think the biggest thing for anybody is called consistency, Jonathan. There is something
Mhm.
that when you make your bed every day, or you get up every day and you do that workout, or you get and look at that sun, or you meditate, or you pray, or you do some form of something that gets you into that different zone. There's something to be said about the consistency, and it's ice baths. When you get out there and you do that 1, 2, 3, 5 times a week, you realize it's the hardest thing you're going to do that day, and then the rest of the day is good. So I think what I'd love the audience to understand is find out what works for you. If it's not working after 6 to 8 weeks, try something different. So obviously consistency doesn't always work depending on what you're putting in your body. If you consistently eat McDonald's with fries every lunch, even though you're not eating breakfast or dinner, that's probably not ideal either, right? So for you, I think what was key is that having that smoothie every single time, and being consistent, right? So again, you said you weren't rigid. I'd say you were very rigid. Having a 6 hour window is badass, and always doing that smoothie is also badass. And I think you probably got your mind to look forward to it, but going, not 12, but going 16 hours, right? You're going,
You
no,
know what
you're,
this?
you're doing 18 hours. You're doing
Yeah, I
18
was
hours
doing
in six
yeah,
hour
I
window.
do about. I think I do about 15 or 16 hours now.
Yeah, that's
But
okay.
you know
Okay.
what it does? Here's one of the most interesting side effects of fasting. So, from an intermittent fasting standpoint,
Yeah.
I try not to eat after dinner, which is typically about 6:30. Okay. And what I notice is that if I wake up and have my glass of water and then I have my protein shake for lunch, even if I dabble, like have a piece of salami or cheese or something, just a snack, dinner is always amazing.
Mm.
Like it magnifies the quality
Yes.
of my dinner,
Yes.
especially if I go out to dinner. It's like, oh wow. And what I'm recognizing is that's one of the deep values, the deep lasting values is it
Yes.
makes you appreciate things more. Like that's what I love about it is it makes you appreciate things more when the things that you already have. So I
Yes.
think that's the thing that's been blowing my mind the most is with fasting by removing yourself from having everything I want. Because I'm an upper middle class white male. I could have a lot of stuff, and I realize I don't need everything. I just need to enjoy what I have. And I think
Yes.
that's been the biggest side effect that I've really been learning.
It is enjoyable to break that fast and or to have that real meal of the first real meal of the day. There's something to
Yeah,
that, right?
yeah. Because the
Somebody was
shake
beating
is a
that.
liquid,
Yeah,
you know? It
yeah,
fills you, but it doesn't really fill you because it can move through your body a lot quicker. 'Cause you have to
100%.
break it down. So,
Yeah.
and I have started grounding. Sean Patterson, the doctor Sean Patterson that we interviewed, he and I were talking about grounding. And what I do is I lay on the grass for 5 minutes and stare at the sun with my eyes closed. So I kill two birds with one stone, putting my eyes directly in the sun and grounding my body. And I can't tell you how I think the basic principle about letting light in just generally pays off in spades.
No,
It
it
completely
seems like
pays off in
that's
spades.
just critical. I'm going to go down to the beach, and I think there's something special about the sand too. I mean, the sand is like because you're literally tapped into that freaking ocean, right? I'm surrounded
Mhm.
by concrete, with a little bit of a patch of grass, right? Just like probably you are at Discovery Bay. And I think when you see like Jack Cruz, he's in the sand every day, and he's walking along that beach. Then he's looking at the sun, right, as he's doing it, and he's probably processing his day. And I think it's amazing. So that, like, even when we talk about like what we do in the morning, I mean, I try to get up in the morning. I have that water. I also like to stretch. So when we
Uh-huh.
talk about like my day, there's a set of stretching exercises I do with my hip flexors, my quads, my lats, and other parts in my hamstrings that I learned from my son, and I really appreciate that. And then I do my meditation for 20 minutes, transcendental
You do it
meditation. Yeah.
every day.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah. I
That's
do it every
freaking
day. In fact,
awesome.
I almost do it twice. I try to do it twice a day. There's been a few times here and there where I don't, but I do. I haven't missed a day except maybe
Do you
once.
look forward to it?
I do. There's something that
Yes.
happens in there with your head that you look forward to it. It's really cool, Jonathan. Um, but then after that, that's when I get the coffee going, and then I head out in the backyard, stand on the grass, look at that sun perfectly coming through. And they say that you really want to get in that sun in that first hour or
Mhm.
hour and a half when it rises, because that's when the minimum UV comes in. So, obviously, if you're exposed to the sun and you're at the beach and it's noon, that's great. But the optimal time for viewing, getting that peripheral light is there. And then, I don't, you don't, they say you don't have to do ice baths every day, right? They say try to do cold showers as much as you can, but ice baths you only need 2 to 3 times a week. And so we can talk about some of the benefits of that, and then, or some supplements that I'll also take. But that's kind of how I start my day off.
Nice. So how often are you doing the ice bath? I think what is like 11 minutes a month you need in
Oh,
an ice bath?
I will do between 3.5 and 5 minutes every session, depending on how
Wow.
cold it is, right? So if it's like 42 degrees, it's hard to do 5 minutes. If it's 35 to
Yeah.
45 degrees, but if it's 50 to 59 degrees, I can hang out there for 6 minutes because it's kind of a breeze these days. Um,
Okay, so for those of us who have not gotten there, mine is still sitting in my shed. I haven't gotten on that train yet, dude. I haven't. It's an ice problem. I'm giving myself that it's freaking 107 degrees outside, so it's going to be impossible to keep it cold.
it's
So
going to
I
be a
haven't
challenge.
jumped in
Yeah.
that wheel. But for those who haven't done it, what's the first 10 seconds like?
It's hell. You you're getting in there, and your knees, and your feet and everything's starting to get really cold. And then as you slowly lower yourself in, you're trying to not have a heart attack, literally.
Do you
In
do
your
the slow approach or do you just get in?
Well, now I just go straight in, right? It literally
Okay.
takes me 1.5 seconds to drop into my neck. But in the first time you do it and you watch this happen, it might take 4, 5, 10 seconds for people to slowly creep in there, but it doesn't do any good just to do that. But the hardest thing is, even if you do plunge right in, that first few times you do it, you've got that breathing it just takes your breath away, right? That's what
Yeah.
ice therapy does. But the benefits, according to this Brecca guy that you and I both follow, are, first of all, if you can get to doing it, it's going to reduce your inflammation of muscles and your body. It's going to increase flexibility. It's going to also do something, and what the Brecca talks about is it's called a cold shock protein. And what it does is it sends these kinds of things into your body to make you almost immune to getting sick. So Wim Hof not only, of course, does his breathing method, but he's also a famous Iceman, and he hasn't been sick for a long, long time. And doing that puts his natural immunity. Now, there's something else that happens is with that cold shock protein, I believe it also helps shred fat. And there's something about what it does is that it just helps you burn fat faster. Maybe it's because you're breathing out all the time. And then lastly, there's something called brown fats that's different than the lipids that you and I have around our midsection. They're under they're under the skin itself. And supposedly, when you do the cold therapy, it spins up the mitochondria and helps the mitochondria work better. And that's, we all know how important the
Really?
powerhouse of the cell is, right? So
Yeah.
doing cold therapy helps with that.
Wow. Now, what's it like getting in now? Because obviously it's a different experience. You've been doing this for a while. When
It's
you
easy.
get in, how long does it take you to recover now?
Okay, so here's a good thing. Now I'm not a so we watched Russell Brand here from Joe Rogan, and he's hopping around in his skivvies.
I
I'm
know.
like, dude, find a different pair of Calvins, baby.
I know.
Come
Yeah.
on, dude. Um, and so what he does and what is recommended is you warm yourself up slowly. Now Russell Brand just hangs around all morning naked, and he slowly
Is that
warms
interesting?
himself up like that. I don't think you need to do that because you've got to really do your day, right? So I'm not a purist in that if I've got to get ready and I don't want to be shaking on a call at 8:30, I will hop in the shower and bundle myself up, in a Patagonia. People will be looking at me, dude, why are you all bundled up right now? And I'll tell them why. But if I actually have a little bit more free time, I do like to just let that sun hit me. I dry off, and then you slowly feel it and you get warm slowly. And that's the best way to take advantage of it. That slow letting your body warm itself naturally is the best way to take advantage of that. But
Do
again,
you run
because
around naked?
I'm not a legalist. What was that you were saying?
Do you run around naked?
I don't, no, but I'll just hang around on my towel, or if I got a good sun day, I'll just let that sun soak it up and I'll just enjoy it.
Nice, dude.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so
What
what are your dinners?
else do you do for a life hack, Jonathan?
So, probably the biggest one that I think I've put into serious practice is to approach every situation looking for good and kind of
Ah,
mentally placing myself into a position where what is good happening here? Because it's really easy. So my default mode network's first response in any situation is what is to be feared, what is to be protected from. It's literally doing a scan constantly.
Yes.
And that creates a pattern that my body does in my autonomic nervous system. And what I realize is the more that I hijack that and turn it over to the good, the more that I find myself having in a kick-ass experience.
I love
But
it.
and this is the beauty of love, I think, is by focusing on the good first. Like when you see your best friend, your very, very, very best friend, what's the thing that comes up? All your greatest memories together. That's what bonds you. Well, I realized, why can't you do that proactively? Why can't you proactively create amazing experiences by assuming the best about everybody? So
Well,
that's probably,
let me interject there. Let's say
yeah.
you're walking. Let's say you've got your daughter and she's at school, and you watch three kids beat the crap out of a smaller kid, and there's a lot of sadness going on and hate, and you want to protect the little kid, and you break them all up. Maybe
Mhm,
that's not a good example, but let's say you see something, there's some violence on
mhm,
YouTube or on the news, or
sure.
you actually see it physically in front of you. Bad shit's happening in Oakland,
Right.
in San Francisco. Stuff's getting broken into. So you watch, you park
Mhm,
your car, you watch two people go in there, and you're 300 yards away. They bash everything in, they take everything out of your car, and they take off, and there's nothing you can do about it. And the cops aren't going to come. How do
yeah.
you how do you look at that in a positive light? Or let's say you were actually right there in front of you, caught them red-handed, you're looking at them. How do you turn that into an act of love and or the best scenario in that situation?
Well, here's the thing, that it's one of the things that I do is when a situation comes, I look for the worst case scenario.
Okay, you
Okay.
do that.
And
Okay.
no, that's how our bodies are programmed. Our bodies are programmed to protect us. That's what
Yes.
the default mode network does. So my
Yes.
automatic for the most of my life has been, how do I protect myself first? That's the first conversation that's happening in our subconscious. It's our
Okay.
automatic.
Yeah.
And by hijacking it, and like if you look at your wife and you saw the worst in her every single day, what do you think would happen to your relationship? It would probably go to shit.
It would go to
Okay.
shit.
If you start with your wife every morning, you wake up and go, fucking, she's gorgeous. I love her. And you remind yourself of the best parts of her. What do you think you're going to remember throughout the day? And that's a simple hijack. Is I start every morning, and my body has just started to wake up at sunrise for some reason every day now. I just wake up. I've never done that. I'm an 8 o'clock guy. And it wakes up and I go, it's going to be a fucking amazing day.
I love
And that's the root pattern I'm trying to create by hijacking it, starting it with, and what I realize is that our base fear always goes to the nth degree to find that situation that we should protect ourselves in. And yes, we absolutely should. But here's the reality: in our day to day life, those exceptional situations don't happen very much. And it goes back to the principle, why worry about the things that never happen to you?
94% of them never do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So, what happens if you get 94% of your life back by assuming, starting with good, 94% of the time you're
That's
going to be
huge,
right?
man. That's huge. Yeah.
And that's the shift that I'm trying to make in my mind on an activity basis. I wake up, start with this idea that something really good is going to happen today. And I just have to look for it. And when I find it, I realize, oh my God, life is very enjoyable.
I love it, man.
And honestly,
I'm gonna call it a mind hack instead of a hijack. Hijack to me sounds like a little bit of pejorative, so I'm gonna call it a
well,
mind.
I like Mind Jack. It goes back to one of the things that I learned last week is Dr. Dispenza has the idea of a mind movie. And I
Yes.
think that's why movies are so powerful is we see them in a dark room and it's like we're looking at our mind's eye, and it's that's the same thing that happens mentally inside. We are seeing a movie in our mind when we close our eyes, and you can actually script that.
Yeah.
You can
That's beautiful.
say, this is what I'm going after, and practice focusing on that. And the idea is that you attract the energy to that by making it real today. So
I
I
think
think
that, yeah,
what I've learned is I'm benefiting in a very profound way by beginning to shift my thinking that way. I'm
I think it's huge, man. No, and you've proven it. Your lifestyle, your success, it's all lagging indicators of what you do day to day, right? That this is what people. This is why it's so hard to change habits and stuff like that. It's like it takes time and effort, but repetition, and then you'll see the fruit of the labor later. And I think you're living it right now, man. And I'm starting to see some of it too. I'm starting to see some of the benefits of my
Yeah,
meditation and the manifesting as well. I just need to do what you've been doing and turn off the Twitter, because you're absolutely right. You can see something new and negative every freaking day, whether it's, Mitch
you
McConnell
can.
staring out in the
Right,
starlight, in the middle of a press conference. He just goes dead silent, right? Diane
right.
Feinstein starts to read the bill and like, dude, just say I. Oh, okay. I'll just say I. Yeah, just say I. Okay, I. Dude, we should not have. Biden should not be in office. Fetterman shouldn't be in office. McConnell shouldn't be in office, and Feinstein shouldn't be in office. This is where I start to go down that path of
Half
like,
the
why do we
Supreme
have
Court
people with
shouldn't be
no
on
idea
the
what
Supreme
they're
Court
talking about?
anymore.
What's that?
Half the Supreme Court shouldn't even be on the Supreme Court anymore. I mean, there's so much corruption. It's almost like, are we living in strange times? That we are in the Matrix, dude. It's like
Dude, the guy's
the
talking
shit
about we
going
have
on in politics
non-human
right now.
biologics. We have non-human biologics that we found, and that comes up right when they just do the interest rate and Fed now, right? So it's a psyop. I mean, they actually there's
Do
an
you
image
think it is? Do you think it is?
image on there's an image for the last 80 years that show where all the people who've been talking about UFOs come from. It's 98% the United States, a little bit in Puerto Rico. There's a little bit in the UK. That's it. There's like barely anything across the globe. I'll share with you. It literally, the entire United States is the only freaking country that's worried about UFOs. Now, does that make any sense to you?
So your deduction is that it's a psyop.
It's a total
Kind of that.
psyop, dude. These
Okay.
these are freaking really intelligent people, and they just happen to crash, right? And we've got dead bodies, and they've attacked. I mean, no, dude.
What is it? What is it hiding? What do you think the narrative that they're trying to distract people from is? Because it's
Well,
distraction is good.
technology, right? So, Skunkworks found something that's going to help us blast the Soviets into nothingness, and that was huge with obviously the Cold War, right? Oh, we like Roswell, and that was in the 50s, man, and the 60s, I believe. It's like we found this. It's like, oh, we could find the new secret weapon. We're just going to reverse engineer it. We're going to, put it on our planes, and we're going to take out the Soviets, right? And so,
Here's how you know. Here's how you know it's a psyop. That the government. It's a psyop if we don't hear about it in a year. Like you
yes,
can't drop something like that and just expect nothing to happen. It's a
yes,
psyop if it goes away. If it stays and lingers, I don't think it's a psyop. In other words, but here's the next question.
okay.
What happens if the evidence is actually released and they show us the body? What would you do if they showed us the body?
The next thing you're looking for is that a fabrication, right? I mean, it's like there's the Loch Ness monster,
Okay.
there's the Bigfoot. Everybody's got these little images and everything's, used to like X Files and stuff. But the
No,
problem is,
you
like,
see the body.
I mean,
You
you
see the
can say
body.
you've got it. You can say that's the body, but how do you know they haven't fabricated something? How do you know that it's actually legitimate? Like, hey, we're doing a microscopic. There's no carbon life form the same way we have on Earth. There's nothing on this creature that has any of the same kind of makeup that anything on this planet would have. Like, I guess if you found anything on planet Earth, they'd have a large carbon footprint in it, right? Clearly,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So if there's, let's say it's mostly made up of hydrogen and some other kinds of weird gases and maybe titanium, then that would be obviously something that would be interesting, right?
Yeah, it's. I realize the more that I listen to my own habits, the more that I realize, yeah, I've got some stupid habits, you know,
So
and they're so
what's an example of a stupid habit?
subconscious.
What's an example of a stupid habit?
Um, I don't floss, and I think that's a habit. I avoid flossing, and
How are your teeth
it's
done? Do you have massive fillings and do you have crowns everywhere?
I have like 12 crowns in my mouth.
Holy
Like I've
shit!
Yeah,
You're not
no, it's
joking.
bad. No, I'm serious, dude.
That is,
None of my front teeth are crowns, but all the back ones are all crowns,
I have two
top and
crowns
bottom.
because my teeth shattered eating something really hard. Like I had like some weird kind of nut once, and then I have two back here, bottom and top, only on one side. My dentist looks at my teeth like they're amazing, but I don't
Really?
floss every day. I floss like every other day.
Yeah, and I think one of my dumb habits, and I have to, take this with a grain of salt because it's with my wife. I don't really enjoy sitting in front of the TV anymore. I like shows, like if it's a really good show, doesn't engross me, but I'm finding that 8 to 11 time frame is my body is like going, there's got to be something more than this because it's too repetitive, I think. I think I do it too
I'm
much.
right there with you,
I
man.
think that's a dumb habit, you
I
know?
I spend my time with my wife because she wants to watch something, but she'll watch this like there's this show about this boat crew, right? And she watched all of the
Oh
White
yeah.
Lotus and all this
Uh,
stuff. And she's looking for that next series, and I'll get hooked on a few of them, right? I loved Yellowstone and 1883 and some really good shows, and we loved Mrs. Davis, which you still have to watch. You have to watch Mrs. Davis. It's all about love. It's amazing. It's Damon Lindelof, who you know from Lost, who also was with The Leftovers. But I'm there with you. I'd rather go read in the other room and soak up that rather than, and I'm getting more excited about reading again, right? I've lost it for a while, but I definitely say, you know what? I want to do something that's going to actually give me something, right? And I've gotten her in the habit of finishing her book that she's been working on for 3 years, Jonathan. It's
oh
taken her
wow.
three years to read this book. And she's almost done. She's going on a cruise with Ari and her friend Sherilyn, with these other girls who graduated with Ari. And hopefully, over the next 3 days, she might be able to finish the book.
Yeah, I don't put books on my dresser anymore. I don't read in bed at all anymore.
Okay, so
Most
what would you like to
Well, I
do? And
listen to my books. I do. I consume probably a book every 2 weeks. I have an
yeah,
Audible subscription,
yeah, that's
and
a good habit. That's a good habit.
it keeps me well, one, I listen to it on my walk with my dog every night, and, it's I focus half nonfiction, and I like autobiographies. I like Matthew McConaughey's biography was so good. That's how I found David Artman. It's like just having that habit of reading again. Because I think I burned out when I got my master's. I think I read 12,000 pages in about 14 months.
Wow.
And oh my God, it was like every week I had to finish a book. I had to read a book every single week and sometimes two, and while working, and it was a brutal schedule, and I remember just going, yeah, I don't want to read anymore after I graduated, and then it became a habit of not reading, and then I realized, oh, I need to start reading again, so I picked it up about 2 years ago, and it feels so much better reading than not reading. I feel like I'm in a now that I understand how when I'm in delta brain, I can't learn and I slow down, like when I'm doing my walk, I'm able to slow down and, kind of center myself, get into that state of really opening myself to learning. I feel like I am learning. I feel like I've gone to school that is really interesting.
Yeah.
That's the value of reading and listening to the book. It works for me auditorially. I know some people like to read. Do you like to read or do you like to listen?
I prefer to read because I can also highlight. So one of the things you
Oh,
can't
I
do in
get
the
that.
audiobook,
Yes, I totally understand that.
yeah, the audiobook, and the problem with the audiobook is like it's good when you're walking. But when I'm like driving and listening to an audiobook, I get distracted, right? There's traffic, there's cars, there's scenery, there's something, and
Mhm.
you miss a lot, right? When you're on Audible. So I think if I were to do Audible more often, I would probably want to do it when I'm just kind of in a zone of walking blindly and not giving a damn about anything else and just you really soaking it up. But I prefer just to open those pages, highlight, and then you can go back and then you can stop what you're doing you see a word you don't understand, you look it up. I saw ossified the other day, which is to make to harden like a bone would, or
Mhm.
it makes things more difficult, right? And the term ossify is like, it's to do with bone, but it also means to make, I think, to make things harder to do, right? So I'm like,
Really?
okay, that's cool. And you can't do that when you're on Audible. You can't say pause. Well, I suppose you could say, "Hey Siri, what's the meaning of ossify?" And then you go
I
back.
regularly stop it. I do agree. That's the one thing that you can't do audibly is you can create a note, but it's just what you say about it. It's not like the highlight part. That is a huge thing for my brain. Like it's like what I've learned is, when you hear an idea and you write it down, you're actually imprinting it on your body. And that's the value of highlighting for me is it's almost like you're putting it into yourself. And I miss that because it's hard to take notes in Audible. It is.
It is, yeah.
But I like hearing, especially when it's an autobiography by the actual author. Like Rob Lowe's book was so good. It was all about fatherhood, and I just absolutely
Which one's
loved
that
it.
one?
What's that?
Which book was that?
Oh gosh. I'd have to look it up. It was
I
his
mean, I read
last one that he just
Jesus Wants
released
to Save
about a year
Christians,
ago.
right? Velvet Elvis. There was obviously Sex God, and uh, then he talked about something. Love Wins, right? And then he did a book on the Bible. So I've got those ones, but I've not read his autobiography.
No, no, no. Rob Lowe, not Rob
Oh, Rob
Bell.
Lowe.
Yeah, his book on fatherhood is stunning because
Oh, cool.
he loved being a dad. Like
That's awesome.
that was his thing, being a dad. And it was a beautiful story of him, sharing how he loved his kids. And I loved it. Matthew McConaughey's was a brilliant book. It really was. It was kind of his take on life, kind of his right on, right on, right on
I
thing.
love that
And
guy, man. I mean,
oh
you
yeah,
just watch Interstellar, and you just watch the movies he's
he's
in.
a great actor too.
He is great. I just watched The Gentleman last night with Hunter. That's a Guy Ritchie movie, and if you haven't seen that, it's really fun. If you watch Snatch or Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, it's kind of got
Wait,
that bend to it.
Gentleman?
So really good.
The Gentleman?
The Gentleman, yeah, you should be able to buy it
Which
on
one is
Amazon.
that?
He plays actually a he plays a guy who runs a multi-billion-dollar pot operation in the UK. It's got a little gangster aspect to it, a lot of
Okay.
action. It's got Colin Farrell in it. It's absolutely and Hugh Grant. It's brilliant. It's
I've seen
absolutely
that.
brilliant.
I actually have seen it. Yes.
Okay,
Now that you mentioned that, that was actually a really good movie. It was very interesting.
yeah,
So this was actually a really good episode. I like the idea of talking about life hacking because one, that's a matrix quality. It's something that the matrix actually intimated at very clearly is that we can hack ourselves, and I think we're learning that we can. So I would encourage any of our listeners to share what hacking methods you've used in YouTube or in the podcast comments. Please do share what you're doing. Let us know. Reach out to us. And any final words, Rich?
yeah. I've just when you said that, I was just thinking about the two scenes in the Matrix where at the first time Neo says no, and he just holds his hands out, and all his bullets stop in midair and they drop. He starts to think, and when you looked at that situation and you try to frame them in terms of love, in terms of looking at the best part of that, and then again he goes a little bit further on, and then he actually stops the Sentinels, right? So he's in the Matrix stopping
Right,
the bullets,
right,
but now he's in the real world, and
right.
now he's stopping the Sentinels, and that's like, what the hell did you just do, dude? Nobody freaking stops a Sentinel with
Right.
just their vibrations, right? And so it's like, okay, that is the next level, right? 100%.
Do you know if the Wachowskis I know they built that from, I think it was transcendentalism or, but were they quantum related? Was that sort of the core of their ideology? Do you know?
I haven't gone into detail on the Wachowski brothers and on what they did. I do believe they talk a lot about Plato's Republic and
Okay,
the cave and that kind of scene.
that makes sense.
where
Yeah.
you kind of try to get out of that scenario. But as you know, there's themes of Buddhism, there's themes of
Yeah.
Christianity, right? There's the one, is like Jesus and his sacrifices, right? So there's so many kind of different angles to it. So I think they tapped into a lot. They definitely broke into something that is transformational, and I think has had as much meaning and impact on our generation and maybe two generations as you can even imagine, right? I think the premise of it is just absolutely incredible.
Dude, this has been awesome. Always love talking to you. To our listeners, please comment, review. We'd love to hear from you. And we will see you next week. Much love, everybody.
Be well.